You've lived your whole life asleep in your own story. It's time to wake up. The storm you fear isn't destroying you. It's reshaping who you truly are. You spend so much of your life running, not from the world, but from yourself. You chase distractions, numbness, validation, anything to avoid that quiet place where your truth waits. Because deep down, you know there's a storm inside you that you've never faced. A voice you've silenced so many times that it now speaks through your fears, your anxiety, your restlessness. The pain you avoid has become the silent architect of your life, shaping your choices, your relationships, your identity. You tell yourself you're strong because you keep going, but strength isn't about motion. Strength is about confrontation. The real battle isn't out there in the world. It's in here, inside your mind, where every wound you've buried still breathes, still waits to be seen. You've been taught to hide your pain, to smile when you're dying inside, to say, "I'm fine," when you're not. You've built your mask so perfectly that even you've started believing it's your face. But somewhere beneath that mask, your shadow watches. Silent, patient, waiting for you to turn around. The shadow is not evil, it's misunderstood. It's every part of you that you've rejected, every emotion you labeled wrong, every impulse you buried, every truth you were too afraid to speak. The anger you suppress, the jealousy you hide, the tears you never cried, they all live there. You were told that to be good, you must be light. But light without darkness is an illusion. Wholeness requires both. You see, when you deny your pain, you deny your depth. You clip your own wings in the name of perfection. The world doesn't need your perfection, it needs your honesty. Because when you pretend to be unbreakable, you rob others of the courage to be human. We live in a culture obsessed with positivity, with constant happiness, with polished masks. But healing doesn't happen in the light of performance. Healing happens in the darkness of truth. It begins the moment you stop pretending to be okay. You've mistaken silence for peace, numbness for strength, distraction for healing. But peace doesn't come from running away. Peace comes from meeting the parts of yourself you've exiled. The shadow isn't here to destroy you. It's here to show you the parts of yourself that are still alive beneath the armor. That trembling pain you feel when you're alone. It's your soul trying to speak through the noise. It's the echo of your own becoming. Every time you suppress your truth, it doesn't disappear. It grows roots. It seeps into your habits, your relationships, your thoughts. The anger you refuse to feel becomes self-sabotage. The grief you bury becomes emptiness. The fear you deny becomes control. You think you're hiding it, but it's living through you in disguise. The more you run from it, the more it becomes you. To face the shadow is to walk into yourself without judgment. It's to sit with your pain and say, "I see you." It's to stop asking, "Why am I like this?" and start whispering, "I understand." Because the shadow only transforms when it is embraced. You can't destroy it, you can only integrate it. And when you do, something miraculous happens. The very thing you thought would break you becomes your greatest source of strength. Your shadow holds your creativity, your passion, your authenticity. The fire that can rebuild your life lies in the ashes of what you've tried to forget. You fear your darkness because you've been told it's dangerous. But in truth, it's only dangerous when it's ignored. When you bring awareness to it, it becomes wisdom. When you give it space, it becomes power. Transformation doesn't begin when you fix yourself. It begins when you stop pretending you're broken. You are not a problem to solve, you are a mystery to unfold. Every scar you carry has a language, a story written in pain that's waiting to be read. You can only read it when you stop turning away. When you lean in, when you let yourself feel, you begin to see that your suffering was never your enemy. It was your invitation. The shadow is the bridge between who you were and who you're becoming. When you walk through it, you reclaim every part of yourself that you once abandoned to survive. You meet the child who learned to hide to be loved. You meet the teenager who built walls to feel safe. You meet the adult who forgot how to cry because vulnerability once hurt too much. You meet them all, not to fix them but to hold them. Because they are you, and they've been waiting for your compassion, not your rejection. When you face your shadow, you begin to see life differently. You stop judging others because you see their pain as a mirror of your own. You begin to understand that everyone is fighting an invisible war inside their mind. The person who seems cold is protecting themselves. The one who lashes out is drowning. The one who seeks control is terrified of chaos. You stop living from reaction and start living from awareness. You no longer seek to escape your emotions. You learn to feel them fully and let them pass like storms. This is the work of transformation. Not to become someone new, but to return to who you truly are beneath the layers of denial and fear. The process is not gentle. It's messy, uncomfortable, raw. You will cry, rage, resist. You will want to run back to the comfort of your illusions. But every time you face your shadow, you reclaim a piece of your power. You begin to trust yourself again. You begin to realize that the monsters you feared were only unhealed versions of you asking for love. Your shadow doesn't demand that you be perfect. It only asks that you be honest. It asks you to sit with your jealousy, your anger, your shame, not to drown in them, but to listen to what they are trying to teach you. Every emotion carries wisdom. Anger shows you where your boundaries were violated. Sadness shows you what mattered. Fear shows you where your growth lies. When you listen, you no longer fight your emotions, you collaborate with them. Transformation begins the moment you stop pretending to be light and start accepting that you are also dark. The moment you stop trying to fix your emotions and instead allow them to exist. The moment you stop chasing love outside of yourself and begin giving it to the parts of you that were never loved enough. When you integrate the shadow, you stop living in fragments. You stop being a divided self. You become whole. The shadow within is not your downfall. It's your foundation. It's the soil from which your truth will rise. The pain you've been avoiding isn't your punishment. It's your passage. It's calling you to stop hiding, to stop performing, to stop clinging to the mask of who you think you should be, and finally turn toward who you really are. Because transformation doesn't begin in the light. It begins the moment you dare to step into your own darkness and whisper, "I am ready to see." There comes a moment in life when everything you've built begins to crumble. Not because you failed, but because it was never truly yours. The plans, the titles, the personas, the masks, they all start to fall away. You look in the mirror and no longer recognize who's staring back. You feel empty, uncertain, powerless. You call it weakness, depression, confusion, but what it really is ego death. It's the collapse of everything false within you so something real can finally emerge. The ego is the mask you wear to survive the world. It's the story you tell yourself about who you are. Your name, your job, your appearance, your beliefs, your achievements. It's the voice that says, "I am this," and fears anything that threatens that identity. But the truth is, you are not your story. You are the consciousness beneath it. You are the silent observer behind every thought. The ego doesn't want you to know that, because the moment you realize it, it begins to die. Ego death doesn't happen in a single moment. It unfolds slowly, like the unmasking of a performer who's forgotten they're on stage. It happens when your life no longer fits the image you created. When the things that used to make you feel powerful now feel hollow. When you can't find meaning in the same places you used to. You think you're losing yourself, but in truth, you're losing the version of yourself that was built to please, to impress, to survive, not to live. What feels like your weakness is the breaking of your armor. The ego loves control. It thrives on certainty, on knowing who it is, on being right. When life shakes that foundation, when you fail, when someone leaves, when the image collapses, the ego panics. It whispers that you're worthless, that you're nothing without what you once had. But what's really happening is liberation. You're being stripped of illusion. You're being invited to breathe without the suffocating need to be someone. Ego death feels like dying because, in a way, it is. It's the death of the you that needed validation to exist. It's the death of the you that was built around fear. Fear of rejection, fear of insignificance, fear of being unseen. When those fears begin to dissolve, it feels like you're losing everything. But what you're losing is the prison. What remains is the witness, the pure awareness that was always there, untouched by identity, unshaken by failure, unbound by form. You see, the ego isn't your enemy. It's a survival mechanism. It helped you navigate a world that demands labels and roles. It protected you when you were too fragile to stand in your truth. But the same armor that once saved you eventually becomes the cage that traps you. Ego death is the soul's rebellion against that cage. It's your deeper self saying, enough. I can't live like this anymore. The process is not gentle. It begins with loss of meaning, loss of certainty, loss of control. You may feel disoriented, even shattered. The things that once defined you no longer satisfy you. The relationships that once felt essential may fall away. You might start to question everything. Your beliefs, your goals, your purpose. This isn't confusion. It's cleansing. It's the unraveling of the lie that who you are could ever be contained in a definition. When the ego dies, silence takes its place. You begin to see how much of your life was noise. Thoughts about how others see you, comparisons, expectations, endless striving for worth. In the absence of that noise, a strange peace appears. Not the peace of having everything figured out, but the peace of no longer needing to. You start to feel life directly, without the filter of judgment. The sunset doesn't need meaning. The laughter doesn't need a reason. You begin to experience being rather than becoming. But the ego doesn't surrender easily. It will resist, disguise, fight to stay alive. It will hide behind spiritual pride, behind false humility, behind the need to be enlightened. It will tell you that you've transcended it, which is just another trick to keep itself alive. The real death of the ego isn't dramatic, it's quiet. It's the soft dissolving of the voice that says, I am this. It's the gentle realization that you are not the waves of thought, but the ocean beneath them. Ego death strips away everything you thought made you special. And in that nakedness, you discover something far greater: connection. You start to see yourself in others. Their pain becomes your pain, their joy your joy. You no longer compete because there's no one left to compete with. The boundaries between me and you begin to blur. You understand that separation was always an illusion created by the ego to survive. When it fades, love becomes natural. Not the love that needs or owns, but the love that simply is. There's a strange beauty in losing everything that was never truly you. The more your false identities die, the lighter you become. The anger you carried loses its fuel. The fear that once controlled you begins to dissolve. You start to laugh at the absurdity of how seriously you once took yourself. The things that once felt like humiliation now feel like freedom. The more you die to the image, the more alive you feel. Ego death doesn't mean you stop existing. It means you stop existing as an idea. You still live, but you live from truth, not performance. You still act, but not from fear. You still feel pain, but it no longer defines you. You stop clinging to control because you realize you never had it. You stop chasing worth because you realize you never lost it. You stop pretending to be something because you finally see that you've always been everything. And in that stillness, a new awareness rises, not the self that says, "I am important," but the self that quietly knows, "I am." That simple awareness is freedom. It doesn't crave recognition or validation. It doesn't need to be right. It just is. You realize that life isn't something happening to you, it's something happening through you. Every experience, every heartbreak, every collapse was carving away what was false, so what's real could breathe. Ego death is not the end of life. It's the beginning of living. The moment you stop fighting to protect who you think you are, you begin to feel the world without walls. You begin to see beauty where before there was judgment. You begin to hear silence where before there was fear. You begin to sense that the weakness you cursed was actually the doorway your soul needed to walk through to find itself again. Because what feels like falling apart is not your destruction, it's your awakening. What feels like emptiness is the clearing of space for truth to enter. What feels like death is just the birth of something infinitely more real than anything the ego could ever imagine. From the moment you are born, the world begins to tell you who to be. It whispers that to be loved, you must behave a certain way. It teaches you which parts of yourself are acceptable and which must be hidden. Slowly, you begin to divide. You start wearing masks. One for your family, one for your friends, one for the world. You build a version of yourself that fits what others expect. And while the outside world praises this creation, something inside you quietly fades. The child who once laughed freely, who once cried without shame, begins to disappear under the weight of pretending. Perfection becomes your prison. You try to be good, to be strong, to be kind, to be right. Yet the more you chase this image, the emptier you feel. Because deep down, there's a voice whispering, "This isn't all of me." You can sense the other side. The anger, the grief, the desire, the darkness. All the things you've been taught to suppress. You push them away because you fear rejection, you fear judgment, you fear losing control. But what you're really losing is yourself. The journey toward wholeness begins when you realize that what you've been calling bad or unacceptable are not flaws, but forgotten parts of your being. The things you hide the most are the keys to your completeness. Individuation is the process of remembering, of gathering every piece you've scattered across time and bringing them home. It's not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming real. To be whole, you must first see what you've denied. The light in you cannot shine if you refuse to acknowledge your shadows. The world has trained you to believe that only light is divine, but darkness is sacred too. The seed grows in darkness before it touches the sun. The night sky holds countless stars that would be invisible without the dark. Your soul works the same way. The parts of you that you bury in shame are not your enemies. They are your hidden teachers. Your anger, for example, is not evil. It's a signal, a fire that burns to protect your boundaries. Your jealousy isn't a flaw. It reveals what you deeply desire, but have not yet allowed yourself to claim. Your fear isn't weakness. It's the part of you that longs for safety, asking to be held. Every shadow emotion carries wisdom if you're brave enough to listen. But listening requires stillness. It requires you to stop running from discomfort and sit with it, to feel it fully without judgment. Wholeness doesn't mean you never fall apart. It means you no longer fear the pieces. It means you can hold your sadness and your joy in the same breath. You can be both fierce and gentle, both confident and uncertain. You stop dividing your soul into good and bad. You begin to see that everything you are, every emotion, every impulse, every contradiction, belongs. The light needs the dark to define it. Without your darkness, your light would have no meaning. As you walk this path, you begin to understand that the people you meet are mirrors, each one reflecting a hidden aspect of you. The qualities you admire in others are the ones you've forgotten in yourself. The traits that trigger you, the arrogance, the selfishness, the control, are the ones you've disowned. Life uses these mirrors not to punish you, but to show you what still lies unresolved within. The more you embrace your inner opposites, the less power these reflections hold over you. Individuation is not a spiritual fantasy. It's a raw, messy process. It's the dismantling of illusion. It's crying when you thought you were strong, forgiving when you thought you couldn't, admitting that your light was never as pure as you wanted it to be. It's realizing that to truly love yourself, you must love even the parts you wish no one would see. Because when you hide from your darkness, you also hide from your depth. The culture around you worships perfection, the flawless body, the unshakable confidence, the curated happiness. But perfection is static, it has no life. Wholeness, on the other hand, is alive. It moves, it changes, it breathes. It allows room for growth and failure, for silence and expression. Wholeness doesn't ask you to erase your darkness. It asks you to walk with it, to understand that your wounds are not evidence of brokenness, but the proof that you've lived deeply. Every wound carries a story, and every story carries a lesson. The pain you once tried to bury becomes the soil where empathy grows. The mistakes you're ashamed of become the wisdom that guides others. The moments you thought would destroy you become the foundation of your strength. You begin to see that nothing inside you was ever meant to be thrown away. It all belongs. The light and the dark are not enemies, they are dance partners, each defining the rhythm of your becoming. As this understanding deepens, you start to feel less fragmented. You stop needing to prove your worth. You stop chasing validation. You realize that authenticity is far more powerful than perfection. You can finally breathe because you no longer have to edit yourself for the world. You can be kind without being afraid of your anger, loving without denying your pain, strong without hiding your vulnerability. The war within begins to quiet, not because you've won, but because you've made peace with every side. The more you accept your darkness, the more your light expands. It becomes softer, wiser, more compassionate. It's no longer the blinding light of ego, but the warm glow of understanding. You stop seeing yourself as good or bad. You simply see yourself as human, and in that humanity, you find the divinity that perfection could never give you. This is the essence of individuation, the merging of opposites within you. The child and the adult, the shadow and the light, the fear and the courage, all coexisting in harmony. You become a mosaic of contradictions, and that's what makes you beautiful. Life stops being about fixing yourself and becomes about discovering yourself, layer by layer, truth by truth. You no longer seek to escape your darkness, because you see now that it's not darkness at all. It's the doorway back to your soul. When you stop striving to be perfect, you start becoming whole. The masks fall, the armor softens, the pretending ends. You see that wholeness isn't a destination, it's a return. A return to the truth that you were never incomplete. You were never missing light. You were only missing the courage to face your shadow. Individuation is that courage. The sacred journey of remembering that you are not meant to be flawless, you are meant to be real. Every person you meet is a mirror, whether you realize it or not. You think you're seeing them, their flaws, their habits, their attitudes. But what you're really seeing is yourself reflected through them. Life uses relationships as the stage on which your unconscious plays out its hidden dramas. Every emotion you project onto someone else, judgment, anger, disgust, envy, is a messenger, a signal pointing back toward something unhealed inside you. The people who irritate you the most often carry the pieces of yourself that you've refused to face. It's easier to point the finger outward than to look inward. It's easier to say, "They're selfish," than to admit, "I'm terrified of being selfish because I was punished for it." It's easier to say, "They're arrogant," than to ask, "Why do I fear owning my own confidence?" The ego loves projection because it keeps you safe from the pain of self-awareness. Blaming others allows you to avoid the uncomfortable truth that your judgments reveal your wounds. You don't see people as they are, you see them as you are. The mirror principle isn't punishment, it's revelation. The universe constantly reflects your inner state through the people and experiences around you, not to shame you but to awaken you. The world is your feedback loop. The qualities you condemn in others are clues to what still controls you in secret, the moment you react strongly, with hatred, disgust, or rage. You're touching an aspect of yourself that's still raw and unresolved. It's not about guilt, it's about recognition. The world outside is just a canvas, and your mind is the projector. You learn early on which parts of yourself are acceptable and which are not. You hide the anger that got you scolded, the ambition that made others jealous, the vulnerability that once got rejected. Those parts don't disappear, they just go underground. They become shadows, unconscious fragments of your psyche waiting to be integrated. And when you encounter someone who openly expresses what you've buried, it triggers you. Their freedom exposes your repression. You despise in them what you've disowned in yourself. The one who talks too much reminds you of the part of you that longs to be heard. The one who's too proud mirrors your own hidden desire to feel worthy. The one who manipulates others reflects the part of you that once learned to control in order to survive. Each irritation, each judgment, each emotional charge is a mirror held up by life, whispering, "Look deeper." This is you. The mirror doesn't lie, but it also doesn't accuse. It simply shows you what's there. If you can learn to observe your reactions instead of defending them, every encounter becomes a lesson in self-understanding. When someone triggers you, pause. Instead of feeding the story, "They're wrong, they're toxic, they're unbearable," ask quietly, "What part of me is this showing me?" That single question can dissolve years of unconscious projection. Because awareness breaks the cycle. You can't heal what you refuse to see, and you can't see what you project onto others. It takes humility to admit that your perception of others says more about you than it does about them. The ego wants to keep the illusion of moral superiority intact. I'm right, they're wrong. I'm evolved, they're not. But this superiority is a defense mechanism, protecting you from seeing your own imperfections. The people who frustrate you most are your greatest teachers, though they rarely look like it. They hold the emotional keys to your evolution. Every conflict becomes an opportunity for integration if you choose awareness over blame. It's not just negativity that mirrors you. Admiration does too. The people you idolize reflect the qualities you've yet to recognize within yourself. You're drawn to their courage because it mirrors your own hidden courage. You admire their creativity because it echoes the creativity you've buried under fear. Every emotion, whether love or hate, attraction or aversion, points back to something within. The outside world is not against you or for you. It's revealing you. Most people live their lives trapped in projection, fighting reflections instead of facing themselves. They end relationships over traits they refuse to see in their own hearts. They judge, criticize, gossip, all to avoid the mirror's message. But no matter how far you run, the reflection follows you. You'll keep meeting the same personality types, the same dynamics, until you finally recognize the pattern. Life will send you the same mirror in different faces, until you learn to look at what it's showing you. The mirror principle dismantles blame. When you understand that others are reflecting your inner world, resentment loses its grip. You stop taking things personally because you realize everything is personal. Every word, every gesture, every reaction is a dance between two unconscious minds, each projecting onto the other. When you become aware, you can step out of the dance. You can meet people with curiosity instead of judgment. You can ask, "What is this person teaching me about me?" The mirror principle also applies to love. The people you love deeply reflect your own beauty back to you. The way they see you shows you the light you've forgotten you have. That's why love feels like coming home. It's the soul recognizing itself in another. But the same mirror that reveals your beauty will also reveal your pain. Love triggers every wound you've ever tried to hide, because it brings you face to face with yourself. When you fall in love, you don't just meet another person. You meet the parts of yourself that are still waiting to be healed. Facing the mirror takes courage because it destroys illusion. It forces you to admit that your outer world is an inner creation, that the cruelty you condemn, the arrogance you despise, the weakness you mock, all exist within you in some form. But once you accept this, something shifts. Judgment turns into understanding. Anger softens into compassion. You stop needing to fix others because you realize they were never broken. They were reflecting the parts of you that needed your attention. Every time you forgive someone, you're really forgiving a part of yourself. Every time you show compassion, you're healing your own heart. The mirror principle reveals that we are all extensions of the same consciousness, playing out infinite reflections of each other's inner worlds. Separation begins to dissolve because the line between me and you fades. When you realize that the world mirrors your mind, you stop trying to change others and begin transforming yourself. The mirror is not always kind, but it is always honest. It shows you your pride, your insecurity, your envy, your hidden longing for love. It confronts you with your contradictions, and in that confrontation, awareness is born. You begin to see that the outer world is the language of your inner truth, and that every reflection, even the painful ones, is guiding you toward wholeness. There are moments in life when everything you thought you could rely on begins to crumble. Your plans, your relationships, your identity. You find yourself standing in the ruins of what once felt solid, unable to recognize the person you used to be. It feels like destruction, but beneath the surface, something sacred is happening. The fire that you curse is not meant to destroy you. It's meant to purify you. This is the essence of inner alchemy, the transformation of pain into power, suffering into wisdom, and loss into awakening. The ancient alchemists sought to turn lead into gold, but what they were truly describing was the transformation of the human spirit. Lead represents the heaviness of unprocessed pain, the dense weight of our fears, regrets, and illusions. Gold symbolizes the awakened soul, radiant, pure, free. The process between the two is the fire of experience, the burning away of everything false. The ego resists this fire because it wants comfort and control. But the soul understands that growth requires heat. Without friction, nothing evolves. Without burning, there is no gold. Suffering is not punishment, it's purification. Every heartbreak, every failure, every disappointment carries within it the potential for awakening. Pain strips away what no longer serves you. your attachments, your masks, your illusions of permanence. It forces you to confront the truth of impermanence, the fragility of everything you cling to. When the world burns your certainty to ashes, what remains is the essence of who you really are. Suffering reveals the truth that peace was never found in what you had, but in what cannot be taken away. When you are in the fire, it feels unbearable. The mind screams for escape. It wants to numb, distract, deny. It says, "This shouldn't be happening. I can't take it anymore." But resistance only prolongs the burn. The moment you stop fighting the pain and begin to feel it fully, something shifts. The fire changes from destruction to transformation. The suffering becomes sacred. You begin to see that pain is not your enemy. It's your initiation into depth. It's the teacher that no comfort could ever replace. True transformation doesn't happen when you are happy. It happens when everything falls apart and you have no choice but to rebuild from the inside. In those moments, life exposes the illusions you've lived by. The identities you thought defined you, strong, successful, in control, dissolve. You are left naked, raw, uncertain. This nakedness is the beginning of freedom. Because when there is nothing left to lose, you begin to live not from fear, but from truth. Inner alchemy is not about escaping suffering, it's about using it. Just as fire can either destroy or forge, suffering can either break you or awaken you. The difference lies in awareness. When you run from pain, it owns you. When you face it, it transforms you. Every emotion you avoid becomes a shadow that controls you from within. Every emotion you face becomes light. The same fire that burns away illusion also reveals the purity of the soul beneath. The process is brutal because it dismantles everything false. You will lose people. You will lose dreams. You will lose versions of yourself that once felt essential. But what you're truly losing are the things built from fear. You're losing the layers that kept you separate from your own heart. The fire consumes what was never real so that what is eternal can finally shine through. It's not about becoming more, it's about becoming less, until only truth remains. The fire refines through contrast. It shows you what's temporary so you can find what's timeless. It teaches you through loss what love truly is. It teaches you through failure what humility means. It teaches you through pain what compassion feels like. Every burn leaves behind a trace of wisdom, a scar that glows with understanding. The soul doesn't seek comfort, it seeks expansion. And expansion always requires pressure, heat, and release. When you look back on your life, you'll notice that your greatest growth didn't come from easy times. It came from the moments that shattered you. The heartbreak that cracked your chest open taught you how to love deeper. The failure that humiliated you taught you humility and grace. The betrayal that tore you apart taught you discernment. The loneliness that broke you taught you how to be whole within yourself. You became gold not because life was kind, but because you allowed the fire to refine you instead of destroy you. In the depths of suffering, the ego dies and the soul begins to speak. You start to see beauty in imperfection, meaning in chaos, and strength in surrender. You realize that healing doesn't mean returning to who you were before the pain. It means becoming someone new, someone forged by it. The alchemical fire doesn't restore what was, it creates what's never been. It transforms your grief into empathy, your fear into courage, your wounds into wisdom. Every human being carries a crucible within them, a sacred space where fire and spirit meet. When life heats that crucible, it's not cruelty, it's creation. The soul uses pressure to awaken itself. You begin to see that your suffering was never random. Every burn was perfectly designed to strip away what kept you small. Every challenge was shaping you into a vessel strong enough to carry light. You weren't being destroyed, you were being refined. The alchemical process follows 3 stages: dissolution, purification, illumination. First comes the breakdown, where everything familiar dissolves. Then comes the burning, where the impurities of fear, pride, and attachment are burned away. Finally, there is illumination, not an escape from pain, but a new way of seeing it. You begin to recognize the sacred purpose in every wound. You see that the light you were searching for was being forged in the darkness all along. The gold that emerges from this process is not material, it's consciousness. It's the unshakable peace that comes from knowing that nothing outside of you can define your worth. It's the compassion that arises when you've suffered enough to understand the suffering of others. It's the quiet strength of someone who no longer fears pain because they've learned to turn it into wisdom. Inner alchemy doesn't promise an easy life, it promises a meaningful one. The world tells you to seek comfort, but the soul calls you to transformation. Every trial, every loss, every fire is part of the great work, the refining of spirit into truth. You are the alchemist and life is the flame. Each time you face what hurts instead of fleeing, you turn the lead of suffering into the gold of awakening. You begin to see that the burning was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to reveal the indestructible essence within you that no flame can touch. There comes a time in every life when comfort begins to rot into restlessness. When the things that once made you feel safe begin to suffocate you. You wake up one morning and realize that the life you've built, the identity you've worn, the routines you've repeated, have all become too small for the soul that's growing inside you. It doesn't feel right anymore, but you can't explain why. The conversations sound hollow. The dreams you chased don't shine like they used to. The people around you keep playing their roles while something inside you whispers, "There's more than this." That whisper is the beginning of awakening, the soul's quiet rebellion against unconscious living. To awaken is not a comfortable process. It's not soft or gentle or easy. It's a dismantling, a shaking, a burning. It's the moment the curtain falls and you realize the world you thought was solid was built on illusions. Illusions of control, identity, and permanence. You start seeing the lies you told yourself just to fit in, to feel safe, to keep the story together. The comfort you once clung to becomes unbearable because you can't unsee the truth anymore. Comfort was never peace. It was sedation. Awakening is the moment you choose consciousness over comfort, truth over convenience, expansion over security. The human mind loves comfort because comfort feels like safety. It loves the familiar, even if the familiar is killing your spirit. It repeats the same patterns, stays in the same loops, because it's terrified of change. But the soul doesn't come here to play small. The soul comes to evolve, to awaken, to expand beyond everything false. And to awaken, the illusions must first break. The collapse you fear, the job you lose, the relationship that ends, the identity that crumbles. Those are not punishments. They are the universe's way of shaking you awake. They are the cracks through which the light gets in. You are not meant to drift through life half asleep, repeating inherited dreams and borrowed beliefs. You are meant to wake up to your own truth. Not the truth the world told you, but the one that has always been whispering from within. That whisper becomes louder through discomfort. Pain, loss, confusion, these are not mistakes. They are invitations to consciousness. Every time life takes away something you thought you needed, it's creating space for something deeper. Awareness. The more you lose, the more you see that what's real was never lost. Awakening begins when you stop running from the silence. In that silence, you begin to see the chaos of your mind, the endless noise of wanting, fearing, pretending. You see how much of your life was spent trying to become someone worthy, when in truth, you were never unworthy to begin with. You see how much of your energy was wasted trying to please others, to control outcomes, to chase illusions of success. Awakening tears the mask off. It exposes the false self, the one built on fear, comparison, and approval. The death of that false self feels like suffering, but it's actually freedom in disguise. When you begin to awaken, the world doesn't change. Your perception does. You start to see everything as energy, everything as reflection. The anger you feel toward others is a mirror of what's unresolved in you. The love you crave from the world is the love you've denied yourself. The chaos outside mirrors the chaos within. You stop blaming, you start observing. You stop reacting, you start understanding. This is consciousness. The ability to witness without judgment, to act without attachment, to live without illusion. But awareness comes with a cost. The more awake you become, the less you can tolerate what's false. You lose interest in gossip, in empty conversations, in chasing what no longer resonates. You crave silence over noise, truth over entertainment, solitude over validation. You begin to see how deeply asleep the world is. Chasing pleasure, numbing pain, worshipping distraction. And that realization can feel lonely, because awakening separates you from the masses. But solitude in awakening is not isolation, it's integration. It's the space where your soul breathes again after being buried under years of conditioning. Awakening is not an event, it's a process, a lifelong unfolding. At first, it feels like destruction because the structures of your old identity begin to crumble, but beneath that chaos is rebirth. Every layer that falls away brings you closer to the truth. The awakening process asks you to let go, not of things, but of illusions. The illusion of control, the illusion of permanence, the illusion that happiness comes from outside you. You start to see that peace was never something to be achieved. It was something to be remembered. Comfort keeps you asleep because it keeps you numb. Consciousness wakes you because it forces you to feel deeply, the joy, the pain, the stillness, to see everything as connected, to realize that nothing happens to you, it happens for you, for your growth, your expansion, your awakening. The moment you stop resisting what is and start observing it with awareness, you step into a different dimension of being. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" That shift in question changes everything. The purpose of awakening is not to escape the human experience, but to live it fully, consciously. To move through suffering with awareness rather than resistance. To love without possession, to work without attachment, to exist without needing validation. When you are conscious, you don't seek meaning, you embody it. Every breath becomes sacred. Every moment becomes a mirror. Every challenge becomes a lesson. You realize that nothing in life is random. Everything is the universe speaking to itself through you. The awakening strips you bare, but in that nakedness you find truth. You begin to see that you were never the roles you played, never the stories you told, never the emotions you clung to. You are the awareness behind them all. You are the silent observer watching the rise and fall of experience. And once you see this, you can no longer go back. You can no longer live unconsciously. Comfort becomes too small for you because your soul has tasted freedom. The mind will try to pull you back, to comfort, to routine, to sleep. It will whisper, "Go back to who you were. It's easier there." But there is no back. Once the light has entered, once consciousness has awakened, the old world begins to dissolve. You can no longer pretend, the noise no longer satisfies, the masks no longer fit, the illusions no longer hold. You realize that everything you lost in awakening was never real, and everything real could never be lost. You are not meant to be comfortable, you are meant to be conscious. Comfort builds walls. Consciousness breaks them. Comfort keeps you in dreams. Consciousness wakes you to truth. Comfort feeds the ego, consciousness feeds the soul. To awaken is to remember what you truly are. Infinite awareness, having a temporary experience through a fragile human form. And though the path of awakening burns away everything false, it reveals something eternal. The radiant stillness of your own being, quietly waiting beneath the noise of the world.